Hello everyone, welcome to this lesson. The title of this lesson is Andre Bazin with special reference to his essay, The Ontology of the Photographic Image. The French cinema theorist and critic Andre Bazin's major commentaries on cinema and its related aspects appeared in public circulation between the 1940s and 1950s. He was one of the founders of the influential French film journal Cahiers du Cinéma, that means Notebooks of Cinema. Cahiers du Cinéma was founded in 1951 jointly by Andre Bazin, Joseph Marie Le Duca, and Jacques Donillo Velcros. Bazin remained the editor of this journal until his death in 1958 at the young age of 40 years. Andre Bazin was born in 1918 in Angers, a western French city on the banks of the river Main. Dudley Andrew opines that Andre Bazin was a social activist. He directed cine clubs and from 1945 to 1950 worked for the communist outreach organization Travel et Culture, Work and Culture. He befriended Jean Renoir, Roberto Rossellini, Orson Welles and Louis Buñuel, and was the father figure to the critics at Cahiers who would create the new wave just after he died. He adopted the delinquent Franco Truffaut, who dedicated the 400 blows to Bazin.
Comment tu vas faire, toi?
Oh, j'en ai un vieux qui a jamais servi. Je couperai la date. Je te le prête jusqu'à demain, t'as qu'à le recopier.
Dans ces conditions, il n'y a qu'à aller manger au restaurant jusqu'à la fin du mois.
Mais pour ça, il faudrait que j'ai une chemise propre à me mettre. Mais bon sang, si t'as pas le temps de laver la chemise, lave-moi le col.
Vous n'avez pas acheté ce phare anti-brouillard pour épater la galerie?
Je l'ai acheté d'occasion.
Bazin's influence spread to critics and filmmakers in Latin America, Eastern Europe and Asia. Learning objectives of this module: to enable the learner to form a brief career profile of Andre Bazin, to comprehend the major ideas of Andre Bazin vis-à-vis cinema, to read and understand Andre Bazin's essay prescribed for study, to comprehend the influence of Andre Bazin in the different phases of the history of cinema, to critically analyze and contextualize the theoretical insights provided by Andre Bazin. The Soviet school of cinema, especially in the 1920s and 1930s, led by Dziga Vertov, Lev Kuleshov and Sergei Eisenstein, propounded that the core of the medium of cinema lies in the editorial practice of montage. Montage simply means searching together two or more disconnected images or sequences to bring in an entirely new meaning to the post-edited cinema. On the contrary, Andre Bazin argued that such manipulative rearrangements force the spectators to embrace the intended meaning of the film. Bazin believed that montage closes the possibility of independent and autonomous interpretation of a movie moment by the spectator. Amongst the early film theorists, Andre Bazin represents the realist school of cinema. Realism in cinematic practices aims at producing an illusion of reality by inventing believable and credible characters and events. Realism is basically an artistic approach wherein a verisimilitude to real life is attempted to create in cinematic narrative, actor behavior, setting, soundscape, etc. To provide an example, close-up shots and extreme close-up shots work against the biological capacity of human eye. Therefore, such shots are normally avoided in realist cinema practices. Instead, realist cinema practitioners preferred deep focus shots. Deep focus cinematographic technique is compatible with the anatomical feature of human eyes. In a deep focus shot, the foreground, the midground and the background of a frame are given almost equal focus. A deep focus shot, contrary to a shallow focus shot, provides a depth of field. Jean Renoir, Akira Kurosawa, Orson Welles were some of the major practitioners of deep focus shots. A deep focus shot provides the spectator the freedom of concentrating on any part of the frame or sequence, whereas a close-up shot compels the spectator to concentrate only on a particular field in the frame of sequence. Andre Bazin's idea of cinematic realism was later reflected in different ways in major movements in cinema like the Italian neo-realist films of the 1940s and the 1950s.
Venga pure, è anche un bel lavoro, sa.
Beh, vediamo.
Allora io vado, eh.
Vabbè, ricordati di passare da Chiurazzi.
Dein Fahrer, sofort.
Wir sind eine Herrenrasse. Sicut in cielo et in terra. Pane nostrum quotidiano, da nobis hodie, et dimitte nos debita nostra, et nos inducant in tentationem, sed deliver et in saecula.
And the French New Wave cinemas of the 1950s and 1960s.
Tout, je suis con. Après tout, si, il faut. Il faut! La 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 la.
Andre Bazin's critical and analytical writings on cinema were in French language. The French title of his 4-volume posthumously anthologized writing was Qu'est-ce que le cinéma? What is cinema? In 1967, Gray translated those writings into English and published in 2 volumes under the title What is Cinema? The essay prescribed in this course is The Ontology of the Photographic Image. This essay is actually the first chapter in volume 1st of Hugh Gray's English translation of Andre Bazin's writings. The foreword to this book, What is Cinema, was written by the French New Wave filmmaker Jean Renoir. In the foreword, Renoir notes that, quote, "There is no doubt about the influence that Bazin will have in the years to come. His writings will survive even if cinema does not. Perhaps future generations will only know of its existence through his writings. Men will try to imagine a screen with horses galloping across it, close-ups of a beautiful star, or the rolling eye of a dying hero, and each will interpret these things in his own way. But they will all agree on one thing, namely the high quality of what is cinema." In the introduction to What is Cinema, Hugh Gray mentions that, quote, "The critical insights that illuminates his writings has not grown dim with years. It continues to shine forth in its very personal way, and arguments through which he diffused it offer a brilliant example of a combination of the critical spirit and the spirit of synthesis, each operating with equal force." Bazin's thought, while rooted in a rich cultural tradition, produces conclusions that at times are forcefully expressed in terms drawn from contemporary science. Now, let's look at some of the key arguments of the essay, The Ontology of the Photographic Image by Andre Bazin. This essay actually links various philosophical, artistic practices behind the creation of mummies, terracotta statuettes, painting, photography, and cinema. Andre Bazin begins the essay by trying to find out the core aim behind the creation of works of art. He says that all art has its origin in a particular psychological condition that ever haunts human beings. He terms this psychological condition as mummy complex. Mummy complex is a human defense mechanism against the ultimate and unavoidable threat of death. He elaborates this idea as, quote, "If the plastic arts were put under psychoanalysis, the practice of embalming the dead might turn out to be a fundamental factor in their creation. The process might reveal that at the origin of painting and sculpture, there lies a mummy complex. The religion of the ancient Egypt aimed against death, so survival as depending on the continued existence of the corporeal body. Thus, by providing a defense against the passage of time, it satisfied a basic psychological need in man, for death is but the victory of time. To preserve artificially his bodily appearance is to snatch it from the flow of time, to stow it away neatly, so to speak, in the hold of life. It was natural, therefore, to keep up appearances in the face of reality of death by preserving flesh and bone." Unquote. The construction of the pyramid, mummification of the corporeal remains, making of terracotta statuettes, etc., show human beings' attempt at preservation of life by creating a representation of life against the ultimate pillage of death. Sculpture, Painting, photography, and cinema also have the same objective of preservation of life. If the earlier works of art were symbolic, with the invention of perspective, works of art started going towards realism. The mechanical system of reproduction also helped artists in reaching closer to realism. The camera obscura of Leonardo da Vinci and the photographic camera invented by Joseph Niepce enabled the artist to create an illusion of reality in a perceived three-dimensional space. The term plastic art refers to all works of art where the artist is working with a plastic or a malleable or flexible medium. Plastic art include painting, sculpture, photography, film, ceramics, etc. Pointing out the crisis in the field of plastic art in relation with symbolism and realism, Bazin says that with the arrival of tools for mechanical reproduction of reality like the photographic camera, traditional forms of art like sculpture and painting are relieved of their burden of representing reality. He explains that, quote, perspective was the original sin of Western painting. It was redeemed from the sin by Niepce and Lumiere. In achieving the aims of Baroque art, photography has freed the plastic arts from their obsession with likeness. Painting was forced, as it turned out, to offer us illusion, and this illusion was reckoned sufficient onto art. Photography and the cinema, on the other hand, are discoveries that satisfy once and for all, and in its very essence, our obsession with realism. No matter how skillful the painter, his work was always in fee to an inescapable subjectivity, unquote. Bazin further argues that ultimately with traditional arts like painting and sculpture, there is a high amount of subjectivity in representation. However, in photography and cinematography, there is an undeniable element of objectivity because the mechanical devices like camera cannot involve subjectively while capturing an object. Bazin elaborates, quote, originality in photography as distinct from originality in painting lies in the essentially objective character of photography. For the first time, between the originating object and its reproduction, there intervenes only the instrumentality of a non-living agent. For the first time, an image of the world is formed automatically without the creative intervention of man. The personality of the photographer enters into the proceedings only in his selection of the object to be photographed and by way of the purpose he has in mind, unquote. Psychologically, the automatically captured photography enjoys more credibility, which is absent from all other resemblance making previous artistic practices. Bazin praises photography by saying, quote, the photographic image is the object itself, the object freed from the conditions of time and space that govern it. No matter how fuzzy, distorted or discolored, no matter how lacking in documentary value the image may be, it shares, by virtue of the very process of its becoming, the being of the model of which it is the reproduction. It is the model, unquote. In the concluding part of the essay, Bazin once again underlines the uniqueness of photography as, quote, So photography is clearly most important event in the history of plastic arts. Simultaneously, a liberation and a fulfillment. It has freed Western painting once for all from its obsession with realism and allowed it to recover its aesthetic autonomy. Unquote. The liberatory potential attributed to photography by Bazin is applicable to the cinematographic camera too. That means, like photography, cinema too takes us closer to realism. Of course, cinematographic decisions like the angle of the shot, fixing of frames, choice of lens, etc. involve some amount of subjectivity. However, in comparison with other plastic arts, the element of objectivity is far higher in photography and cinematography. But there is a note of caution. How would one support Andre Bazin's praise of the objectivity of photography completely in the contemporary age of Adobe Photoshop and similar softwares? Andre Bazin concludes the essay with this final sentence, quote, "On the other hand, of course, cinema is also a language," unquote. This statement does not completely negate the presence of subjectivity in all efforts at the mechanical reproduction of the illusion of realism, including photography and cinema. Thank you for watching the video.